Hello, YouTube. This will be our first public video on our YouTube channel. Here we are looking at the Intentional Society Practice Series for post-conventional personal development. We finished this yesterday, our 9th week of the 9-week series, where we practiced relational practices with themes of awareness, acceptance, and integrity. What I'm going to do is try to cover what we did. 9 practices in 9 weeks, summarized in the next 9 minutes. So without further ado, week 1, we dove in with Empathy Circle. That is a practice of sharing and listening and reflecting and checking and continuing and looping on like that. It's basic block and tackle of listening, deep listening, and feeling heard and understood. So we practiced that. Each one of these weeks, these sessions, comes in a 90-minute container where we do some other activities, but maybe about 60 minutes or so of these is spent in the weekly practice. So we started off with Empathy Circle practice. Next week, we moved into IFS, Internal Family Systems, more generally, parts work. We did kind of a guided visualization of individually visualizing, making contact with, and experiencing parts of us, and resonating with the message that there are no bad parts, as Richard Schwartz would say, and connecting with the goodness that each of our parts has in its desire for us, whatever it is protecting or whatever strategy is it employing, there's a good desire underneath. So grounding in and connecting with that. In week 3, finishing out our awareness-oriented practices, we focused on the interpersonal gap in a session called Mind the Gap. I recall that we did a series of small exercises with different, illustrating different ways in which we might or might not reach over the net, so to speak, when describing our own experience or others people's experience, what we perceive their experience to be, and yeah, bridging across the gap of all that transmits between us is words, sounds, visual feedback, and how well can we connect and be heard by one another again. Those 3 weeks were in January, and then in February, we moved into our practices relating to acceptance. First up was T group. T group is a practice of, let's see if I can remember this, uh, accurately describing your experience of the present moment as precisely and concisely as possible. Something like that. Present moment description. And we practice together describing this. And it's a group practice, a relational practice. And much of what happens is hearing others, experiencing emotions ourselves, and then describing those, and in a way that then other people hear those and have feelings as well, and the energy travels around the group there. This is similar to the practice of week 5, which is circling. Those are very close cousin practices. In circling, you add some more curiosity and you seek to understand what it is like to be with someone in their experience, what it is like to be in their world. So circling is made up of, those noticing moves and those curiosity moves. And we can notice things on the physical layer, on the emotional layer, and on the story layer, where so many of our thoughts and feelings are wrapped up in the stories that we are making about what is happening. And so voicing those, owning those, and checking those is a big part of circling as a practice. Then we practiced a sort of a friend-grown, homegrown practice called inquiry spiraling in week 6. where this is a practice of questioning and asking questions. In groups of 4, we took turns asking questions without answering them and letting them float in the space between us and weaving our questions together throughout the practice. You can see here that we took notes as we went and we recorded them, and so many good questions building on each other. Right. That led into our 3rd unit in March, the final 3 weeks. The first sort of integrity related practice we did was called 9 Whys. This is a liberating structure that consists of asking, what is something that is meaningful or important to you? And then continuing to ask, why is that important to you? And drilling down into the successive, ever deeper levels of detail or levels of meaning and causality that come out in an explanation until you get down to some very deep core or root values of things that we value for their own sake that really animate and put purpose into, meaning into what we might do on a surface level day to day. Session 8, we moved into coaching, a common word, but we looked at the frame of coaching. We looked at pure coaching and pure, clean, peer coaching. The thesis is that the coachee already has everything that they need in order to quote unquote solve their problem or fix things. So the coach is a space holder and is not there to be a consultant, a mentor, an advice giver, but is a space holder, helping that person to explore their own perspective taking and supplying questions that helps them do that. The kind of questions we used come from clean language, which leads to clean coaching, which uses clean questions. So the cleanliness is keeping the coach's own stories and spin on things out of it, using the coachee's words and highlighting and amplifying those so that they can use their own metaphors and their own imagery and their own words to continue inquiring and exploring their space. Lastly, session 9 is Case Clinic by Theory U, Presencing Institute. We have our own spin on it that is called Edge Case that is published on our website. And this is a support practice. It's a casework practice where there is one subject that brings, in this case, the question of what is on your edge of learning right now? Or oftentimes it is a challenge or maybe something that feels like a problem, but it doesn't have to be. And they are with a group of supporters that help them with reflecting, translating, seeing things differently through imagery and metaphor, and then storytelling and generative discussion. So that leaned on some of the other practices in the other weeks, but this was an open container through all 9 sessions, and we had people coming and going, but a hearty core group of folks who were there for the ride of everything. But those are the 9 weeks, and we finished them yesterday, and we're going to now talk amongst ourselves about the overall series, but that'll wrap up this video. If you just wanted to know what we did in our practice series.